Hi, it's Mike here. Today I want to talk to you about a typical approach to goal getting that most people use, and then give you an alternative that I think is a far better approach for busy people like yourself and myself. So the typical approach to goal getting and self-improvement that we are often sold is to set a large goal and then to try and take big leaps in order to accomplish that goal in as little time frame as possible. Now, while this may sound good in theory, for people like yourself and myself, it often ends in burnout, frustration, and ultimately failure. And the fitness industry is rife with this sort of approach to goal getting. You've probably seen the Biggest Loser contest winner who gained all the weight back, or seen somebody that you know, maybe even yourself, who did a crash diet, lost all the fat, and then only to gain it all back in a short amount of time. And it's not just the weight loss crowd that suffers from this. It's quite easy to get caught up in this way of doing things regardless of your goal. For instance, I myself couldn't walk properly for the better part of last week because I decided to do a bit of ego lifting with my squat. And I actually have a video on this if you're unsure of what exactly ego lifting is and how best to define it. Anyways, long and the short of it is that I tried to increase my squat weight by 10% and at the same time also increase my reps by 25%, which ended in me getting a huge amount of DOMs, a sore knee for my trouble, and getting onto my toilet like a paraplegic. I also have a video for this as well, minus the toilet part. Now, there is a better approach I recommend to reaching your squat goals and other fitness goals that requires less effort, less pain, and ultimately less frustration and failure. And it's also one that builds and sustains itself a lot more effectively over time. And this comes from something I discovered in James Clear's work, and it's called the 1% rule. And it basically goes like this. You implement something small that is the equivalent to a 1% change in your daily routine and in how you do things. And over time, this small change compounds and adds up to being 37 times better after doing it for a full year. Here's an image to better illustrate how it works. So with the 1% rule, if you commit to just being 1% better at something every day, and then multiply this by a factor of 365 days in a year, you come out to be 37 times better than what you were before, which is pretty crazy when you think about it. And this image of the 1% rule illustrates exactly why we take small choices for granted. In the beginning, there is basically no difference between making a choice that is 1% better or 1% worse. In other words, it won't impact you very much today. However, as time goes on, these small improvements or declines compound, and you suddenly find a very big gap between the people who make slightly better decisions on a daily basis compared to those who don't. And this is also why small choices don't seem to make much of a difference at the time, but if you add them up over the longer term, they're huge. And on the flip side, you can also see that the choices that were 1% worse basically amounted to no change over time and a pretty steady decline. So if you're feeling stuck with something and you feel that things aren't going anywhere with your endeavors, then you can now logically relate as to why this is the case. Now, as far as how you implement this Kaizen-like progression of continual small improvements, there are two ways. Firstly, you can do more of what already works, where instead of chasing the latest and greatest big thing that seems all new and fancy and exciting, you simply add something small and you compound it. And to give you an example, it's like adding a serve of lean protein to your meals each day. The second way we can implement this approach is instead of trying to add crap to our lives all the time, we can actually subtract some crap from our lives and make it 37 times better. And after a full year, this is what you'd get. And this approach is called improvement by subtraction. And it's more about doing fewer things wrong than it is about doing more things right. An example of this would be eating one less sugary food each day, which would lean you down over time and keep the fat off longer term. Now, how we measure these 1% changes against a big goal also matters too. And this is often because we get too attached to measuring things with foresight about how far away we are from a final outcome, which can often seem quite daunting and intangible, rather than a better approach of measuring from hindsight and comparing ourselves with where we were more recently at. For an example of how this looks in practice, instead of thinking you have to go from a 100 kilogram deadlift to a 200 kilogram deadlift to get to your goal, instead think of giving yourself a target that is slightly better than last time, like a 102 kilogram deadlift. In fact, Eddie Cohen, the greatest powerlifter of all time, did this exactly. He increased his loads by the smallest possible increment in weight, or just added one rep to a training session, and over time these small additions added up to enormous gains and world records over time. As you can see, it's the small consistent gains that you can't really see too well that add up to big visible changes over time. And when it comes to your own training and fitness goals, it's often better to progress gradually and consistently rather than trying to make quantum leaps all the time. It might not sound sexy or so well on the surface, but the truth is that if you're trying to get lean, it's better to lose weight slowly. If you're trying to get really strong, it's better to increase your strength gradually. And if you're trying to get better at your technique, it's better to learn exercises incrementally. Whatever your goal is, just aim to make slightly better decisions and improvements on a daily basis and see how much these add up to over a month, a year, a decade and beyond. If you're burnout and frustrated, I can almost guarantee that you're biting off more than you can chew and you're now choking on it. When it comes to your body, you need to be patient. You can't just go into the gym and lift twice as much as you did the last time and get really strong, or eat half as much as you did yesterday to lose body fat. Your body doesn't adapt that way. Be patient and fall in love with the process of developing small habits and improving yourself sustainably over time. That's all I wanted to share with you today. I hope it resonated with you and got you thinking about your big goals more longer term, while also giving you the motivation to get that 1% better at something small every day. Feel free to like this video if you found it helpful, and don't forget to drop a comment below with your feedback or any questions you may have. Thanks and see you next time.